Hi, I'm James Johnson, founder and CEO coach. Welcome to Peer Effect, the podcast where your peers will tell you what's unlocking their 10 million plus business. My guest today is the co-founder and CEO of sun.store. They're Europe's largest B2B marketplace for solar and storage components. And in 2025, sun.store raised a 6 million seed round and top Sifted's Future 50. This is the episode for you if you're struggling to balance how in or on your business you are.
Agata, welcome to the show. Now, you're running a very successful business now, but that wasn't always your dream, was it? What was your first dream business?
This was it was when I was around 6 or 7, and my first business idea was to have a small kiosk with newspapers, sweets, and all that stuff, just to have this very tiny place for myself. Actually, every day I passed something similar when I walked down to the school. So when I passed it, I was imagining myself sitting there and owning that kind of business, and it felt great.
Did it ever become a reality?
Not really, no, kiosk not, but actually I had a shop with wine and things around wine. So it was commerce, retail, real place with real products there on the shelf. So it was close to this idea, but not exactly kiosk. I think that when I grew up, kiosks were somehow out of the business already.
There's still time. Once you've grown this business, you can go back. Maybe that's the next one.
We'll see. In general, I think my reflection is that quite a lot of businesses from my childhood, they do not exist any longer. There is no market need any longer for such things. But new ideas come over each day. And sun.store, for example, I would never thought about such business till 3 years ago.
Before we jump into sun.store, I'm curious about when it comes to how it's grown so rapidly, but sort of from sort of kiosk to McKinsey, how did you go from being sort of a mini entrepreneur, dreaming of being an entrepreneur, to sort of going to McKinsey? What was the thinking behind that?
Yes, I think that on the way, this entrepreneurial spirit changed slightly. So it started with the dream about being entrepreneur, and then it changed to being in a big business. So somewhere between high school and studies, I decided to go more into corporate world and more of this, let's say, fancy corporate work. So that's why, and then I was always liking to have a plan. So when I thought about having this big corporate career, I looked up for the best companies. I found out that management consulting is actually very renowned. And then out of the management consulting firms, McKinsey was top of the top. So I decided, okay, I need to be there. So from the 4th or 5th year of my studies, I had this plan, actually, not even idea, but plan to get there. I started to prepare to the tests, to the interviews, etc. So it was actually planned and thought through to get there.
Wow. That's quite a degree of sort of planning for a teenager.
Yes, that's true. Probably sometimes to the ridiculous extent of checking which high schools in my city were the best to get into the university I wanted to get. So basically based on the rankings, which high school should I go to in order to get to economy on the best university in Poland, etc. This is the, let's say, but I'm extreme J, there is in this MBTI, you can be on some extremes, and my extreme is to be super organized, which is sometimes helpful, and sometimes it is totally ruining my day-to-day.
We're going to come back on to the execution challenges around that. But I think what's interesting here is that the idea of visualization, planning towards it, is quite a key skill set for a founder and CEO.
Might be, but at the same time, there are also like pitfalls because it's difficult if you visualize something and you stick to the plan, you think that it's going to work and then it doesn't work. It's more disappointing than for somebody going, let's say, more spontaneously.
Well, that probably takes us quite nicely back to McKinsey, because I mean, that if there's one challenge to sort of management consultants, it's all good creating a nice PowerPoint on paper, but actually making it happen is quite different. So
to make this work, basically, you just and with the strategy.
So I suppose what did you take from your McKinsey experience into the startup world? What did you learn that went right, and what did you learn that went wrong?
I think that at the very beginning of management consulting, you just learn the toolkit, the toolkit of how to think, how to structure things, how to prepare presentation, how to communicate, how to prepare Excels. These are, I would say, very basic skills, maybe now already being replaced with some great AI, but back then it was simply a strong toolkit of skills used in business. After 2 years, I couldn't say that I really got into like client management, getting the client sales, managing team, etc. It was a bit too early, but definitely a strong skill set of analysis, critical thinking, problem solving, like usual suspects.
So a good toolkit then, and good habits. What did you find weren't so useful when you moved into the startup space?
Expectation that people would behave the way I think or I believe they behave, because both being around people like my peers at McKinsey, or around the clients in the strategic teams, or like the C-level execs, this gives you expectation that everyone is having such ownership, such way of thinking, etc. And then you go to business and you deal with the people who sometimes they don't care, or they have their priorities somewhere else, or they don't know how to do some stuff. And you have this like high expectations, and then you need to deal with the reality of everyday life and everyday business, and managing people who are not as you expected for many reasons. It's not going so smoothly as it used to when you were around super ambitious, very competitive peers.
Yeah, I mean, I think change is hard, isn't it? That's the one thing that anyone who's done it at any stage is people resist it rationally. They resist it irrationally, but there are many rational reasons for people to resist change. So when you've got your McKinsey experience, you go out into the startup world, people are behaving differently. You've got this sort of very much this J attachment to a plan, a clear vision. How does that show up for you now? Like how do you balance that today?
I think that now I have managed my expectations towards the world, so I have more patience versus the beginning and my first scale up, because the first after McKinsey was Polish scale up doing retargeting. There a lot of things frustrated me, that the projects and plans are not moving as fast as I wanted, that people don't care about my projects, etc., or that I couldn't do things. Now I'm definitely more patient and empathetic with people. I think these years in business, that would be my main learning, that the empathy towards others at work, and the patience versus patience into the processes and projects and how the things move simply. So that would be the main difference. But still I have this, say, clear vision and process orientation in the everyday execution. The main difficulty right now for me is to move from the moment where I was responsible personally for everything, and I was I felt like I'm accountable for every action, every order, every product development, etc. And now I'm moving into giving this responsibility and accountability towards the team, and this is super difficult because when you give it to others, you don't manage it by yourself. It means that there will be more, maybe not more mistakes, but the mistakes are not going to be yours. So it's more difficult to digest.
Like I've got something to maybe a framework to share with you after this. Then, so do you find that's then made an adjustment to your plan? So do you find that you are now taking that into account when you're making these plans? So there's kind of plan A, which is super smooth, McKinsey style execution. Now that's not the case, and you've gone from doing it yourself to building a team, and now you've got managers involved. Are you adjusting your plan accordingly?
Yes, definitely. I don't do any more of A plans. This, like mentioned, like everything going smoothly from the very beginning. I assume that things are not going to go smoothly. I sometimes, even when I'm thinking about the first timeline for some project, I'm like multiplying it by 2 or 3, adding extra month or 2, or like trying to, even when I ask my team, like, how long do you think it would take? I'm adding extra month or 2, and then we land more or less on the realistic execution time. So in the planning, I'm definitely not thinking about idealistic scenarios any longer.
Well, I mean, you managed to get to 100 million GMV in 12 months. So I'm scared to think what an A plan for you would have looked like.
Actually, in this case, in this specific case of our launch, it was not budgeted, so it was not a plan. The plan was actually our ambition for the first year. I remember my first business case was 12 million GMV, so it was a pace which was not expected, definitely. Sometimes, like, the reality is surprise. Actually, it shows that sometimes reality is better than the plan. So it came with many problems too, but still that was a great surprise, reality versus forecast. But also, how can you forecast or budget something which you've never done or nobody else did? So it's like probably any of the budget or any of the plan I did before was not realistic.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a truism that any plan you do is outdated from the moment you finish it. How do you think you achieved that 100 million? What do you think took you from your expectation of 12 to your reality of 100?
I think that, first of all, the market helped us a lot. It wouldn't be possible if the market was in a different timing. So definitely it's like there are these, like, let's say, tornado effects that sometimes in some businesses there is simple circumstances helping the business to build what they are building. And a lot of the first year for us, it was a market help. Because first, the market was still growing very fast in solar and storage. Second, there was a dynamic price changes all the time. So there was a lot of the movements of the goods. People wanted to sell the old stocks. Other people wanted to buy for a very good price. So it was simply a good momentum for a lot of movements of goods across Europe. At the same time, I believe that we pushed very, very hard. So from the very beginning, we wanted to use this momentum to the maximum, a bit with the approach, the winner takes it all. We simply need to fight for the market share. We don't look at anything else. So right now it is way more difficult because we look at the profitability, we look at the client satisfaction, we look at which features would bring us to the next level, etc. There are many factors counting in our strategy or thinking. Back then, in the first year, it was just a simple fight for business. And sometimes it's easier when you have this clear one goal, it unites the team, everyone is pushing for the same thing, everyone is talking just about GMV. There is not like one part of the team talking about operational excellence, other about gross margin, other about the, let's say, financial health, etc. Everyone with a clear focus, just pushing GMV to prove that we have this market share. So this was probably the second strong helper for us.
I think it's quite common that as a startup in survival phase, it's tough because you have less resources and you're pushing. But you say there's kind of a simplicity of the goal. It's like it is survival, which tends to come down to one metric. But then you move into the scaling phase and you have more resources, more people, more possibilities. And actually then you can start getting like siloing. You can start getting people like heading off in different directions. It's a whole different phase.
And I don't know if it's more or less, probably depending on the type of the founder or type of the person managing the business. But in my personal view, it is more difficult. So it's like, let's say, more sophisticated phase versus this pure, let's say, basic instincts of growth in the first couple of months, where everyone simply needs to prove that the idea is at least getting the traction.
It's really interesting. For me, I think it's the other way around. Just because I spent first part of my career, I worked for a multinational doing like business turnaround. Like they try to be like specialist managers. So I think the scaling phase is much easier than the startup phase, just because the startup phase is really hard. You've got to get right into it. You've got to grind it out. You have a high, lower success rate. It's actually, as you start scaling, you can bring in like good people to help. You can build that management layer. You can get more on it. You can be more in control. It just requires almost like a different mindset and different skills. But it's quite a hard transition.
That's true. We are still not there. I would say that we are now in this, let's say, not there yet, but not in this initial phase. So we are somewhere in between, already having some managers, but not a, let's say, very big structure, but also not being a team of 10 just pushing where everyone is selling, and myself including. I'm like going to the I'm responsible for the delivery of the orders. Not anymore, probably, but not yet there to have managers for everything.
Because I think that's a very hard stage, because you're kind of like moving almost on a daily basis, like in the business, out the business, in the business, out the business. So how do you choose what you're in on and what you're out on?
That's a very difficult question and difficult decisions on a daily basis. I think I'm picking the cases based on the difficulty and urgency. So if I see, let's say, the customer service area in which I'm involved on everyday basis, say I'm just picking the most difficult cases, which are too difficult for the team to handle on their own, or the most urgent. It means that clients are really escalating and they simply request or need my attention, or mention they need the attention, etc. So trying to get only the worst of the worst cases on myself, which is also helpful to get to know the business, because in these cases you really get to the dirty things happening in your business. So, for example, customer service, this would be the most difficult and most urgent. When it comes to clients, I think that it's similar to everyone. The most either the key clients for us, so the top accounts, or the ones could be top accounts in the future, but for now still being prospects. And in all the other cases, let's say HR, finance, marketing, etc., I'm trying to ask my team where I should look, like which areas are for them problematic, and they bring the problems on our one-to-ones. So I'm trying to count on them, but sometimes it is not the best to count on this, because I realized with time that people sometimes think that things or problems are too small or not worth discussing with me. And that's not true usually. Usually we could have reacted earlier if my attention would have been brought earlier. So I'm still doing it. I'm still counting that my attention would be picked, but at the same time, sometimes I regret that I didn't react earlier.
And so what percentage of your time do you think at the moment you spend in the business rather than on it?
Probably I like 50-50. 50 would be like managing the team or thinking about the strategy for the future, doing some networking, etc. And other 50 would be like solving real cases or doing real stuff. Like I'm doing also some product development myself, like writing specification or dealing with a client and trying to fix some financials, etc. So probably it would be 50-50.
It sounds like, so the key measure for you is like, is it difficult and is it urgent? Those are the two things you would consider.
And also how much it would bring in value for the business, probably. So it's more connected to this client side or like deal side, but how much it can give us long term if I do it or not.
Yeah, I feel like connecting it to your vision and where you're trying to get to.
Or simply trying to find the time on these things which are not even there yet. Because that's probably the most difficult, but sometimes I also need to think where we want to be in 2 or 3 years and what kind of projects should be there, even though they are not even discussed in any meetings or any kind of business day-to-day business agenda.
So then it sounds like you probably quite a lot of help to your team, sort of if you're picking up some of the harder use cases. How do you get the balance then between sort of being in the weeds with them productively and micromanaging?
So I think that if I'm doing the things, I like agree on this, that let's say there is a part of analysis which I'm going to do myself. It's like that I'm going to do the Excel or do the analysis or change something. It's not that I'm checking in and checking out on the day. So there is clear division. It's this part of the job is something you do, and this is something I'm doing like operationally. It's not that I don't do anything myself, but I'm just checking your progress every 5 hours or 6 hours or every day, for example. So I'm trying to take some tasks or some simple or not simple jobs on myself, not instead of giving very, very small and let's say literal instructions and counting that the team will do it and then checking it, but myself not doing anything.
How do you, that sounds like a great outcome in terms of clear, like rather than micromanaging, you're just saying, I'll take it. What is your sort of planning / tracking cadence with your team to do this? Because that sounds like it's requires quite a lot of discipline and planning up front to the task allocation. How does that work?
I think in this day-to-day business, we're not really doing a lot of planning. We have like simply, like everyone, we have the communicator, and sometimes when we know that there is a bigger task to be done, we communicate on Teams saying, okay, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, let's try to finish it by Wednesday. Simple day-to-day work. We have a lot of project management and cadence around strategic projects we're working on. And there, actually, we have like the plan for the year, which projects we want to close this year, who is responsible, who is the owner of this idea. And there I'm also in some of the strategic initiatives, I'm a business owner and I'm responsible for this idea. In the others, there are other team members responsible for the ideas, and I just help with problem solving on our weekly one-to-ones. So I have a clear division into what is going into the planned strategic initiatives, and these have the cadence, like monthly meetings in the team, talking about progress, etc. And day-to-day tasks, which we don't really plan who is going to do. We simply, when we see that we know that there is a task in some area, we know, like somebody is telling me I can't do it or I don't have enough of time, etc. I simply can help them.
And just so that task allocation in that case, because my planning is like maybe the task allocation, is that done by you getting involved in the project going, okay, I'll do this? Or is that done by your team going, they're planning out their week, let's say, actually, I can't do this. Agata, can you take it? How are you getting visibility and doing that side of it?
No, this is on the teams. So basically, in each of the areas, I have either like somebody responsible for the area. They usually have a lot of ownership. I really have a great team, even if they are responsible for, let's say, some small specific part of the business. They feel owners of this part of the business. They do their planning, they do their processes. And let's say on some of our meetings or day-to-day chats, I realize that there is something behind or that they are, let's say, struggling, and then I offer my support. It's not that we have for everything schedule and I'm like, I know every single detailed process in their areas. That wouldn't be possible at the moment.
So it's more responsive in terms of you're doing a normal catch-ups, that something comes up and you say, okay, I'll take it.
Yes, exactly. Or let's say we have a weekly customer support session, and there are 5 urgent topics, and I'm saying, okay, I will reach out to this client. It seems that they need me calling them and saying sorry or something. So these cases actually come to me by accident or by some in a strange way they are coming to me. It's not that I'm managing every single process. That maybe would be better, but I cannot imagine doing it.
It just felt like you were very, what you're saying for, like very organized. I was wondering, like, was there a sort of a tool behind this you were using or a system? But it feels like the system is just being involved in those kind of frontline meetings and being regular catch-ups with your team, which flag stuff that actually you feel is the right thing for you to do.
And I'm trying to attend a lot of meetings which are not my own meetings also. That like, there is like team catch-up. I will just, if I have time, I will just go there, but not always. I sometimes would come, sometimes not, but trying to join as many as possible just to see and hear from the front line what's happening, what's they're discussing right now, what are their main issues, etc. Even if it's for me, if it wouldn't be my meeting originally or the meeting I would be invited in.
Well, for other founders listening, so at the sort of seed Series A stage, what's one thing that you'd suggest they do around this kind of execution, being in, being out right now? They listening to this, they go, okay, I'm going to go and try that now.
I think that the first thing is just to think about execution in the realistic, or let's say as realistic as possible terms, so that it's not going to assume that it's not going to move as smoothly as we think, that it's not going to have problems. And I'm trying, when I think about execution of some specific things, I'm always trying to visualize what's the worst thing which could happen, just to try to prevent this worst thing in the specific process or specific project, to mitigate the risk. Of course, there will be hundreds of other things which will pop up, but at least some risks I can mitigate at the beginning.
Could you just give me an example of that, if that sounds like quite an interesting tactic?
Yeah, for example, we want to implement the order for order process, so that somebody pays to us, we pay to the seller. The process is very quick, smooth, and we finance working capital for the buyer. And that could actually enable another 10 million monthly GMV. We would be helpful to the buyers because they get working capital. We would be helpful to the sellers because they can sell more, etc. Everything looks great. We have external partners, etc. So in this specific scenario, I'm trying to think what's the worst scenario for my company, what can happen in this process. And so let's say the answer is that I can give the credits to the buyers, I can pay to the sellers, and then there are no goods behind. So basically all the amount is just fraud. So then I'm focusing in this, let's say, execution of the project. I'm trying to mitigate the main risk here so that I simply would lost after a couple of weeks, I would lost all the money I would give from my own balance sheet. That's just one of the ideas but in many projects there which look great from outside, there is this hidden great risk which can actually basically make your business go bankrupt from day to day.
I really like about Agata is that it feels like you're actively seeking out the hardest and most difficult things to pull onto yourself. So you try and maintain a balance like 50-50 in and 50-50 out. But when you're going in, you're really being quite disciplined about not just stuff that's being flagged to you in a responsive way, but you're also trying to dig out stuff that's actually really quite fundamental and important.
Trying to, yes, because I think that's my role to actually figure out the things that other ones nobody would figure out. We are still too small to have people thinking about such like holistic things. So I think that's part of my job.
Do you find that a challenge though, to create the space to think about things through, given the weight of tasks that you've got to do at the same time?
Actually, with this part, like the time for thinking, I cannot complain. I usually have a lot of time to think. This is like daily walking or gym or shower, because as probably all the founders, I don't have like division between my work life and personal life and all other potential lives. So basically I don't have problems with finding time to think, because I can think on the spots every single second. I just have to think about some problem.
Amazing.
It's kind of good because I'm not limited by 8 hours here.
Yeah, I think as founders, that is a very anyone whose partner is a founder is probably very much aware of the founder thinking face, where it's kind of like they're trying to talk to you and you're being lost in some like 5-year future plan.
That's actually great, because I here like I need to appreciate my partner, because he's usually very keen on discussing with me or like while we prepare the dinner, he's happy to discuss something I'm thinking about right now, and I'm trying to do the same for him. So we are both working in business, so it's also very helpful. I think it would be way more difficult if my husband was a pianist or like having a totally different problems. But as we have, at the end, we have similar problems, because it's like working in business, it's all about the same, like how to grow, how to make profits. So it's also helpful. My kid, though, he is still not very into business.
Well, I mean, I don't know how old he is, but give it another couple of years and he might be dreaming of setting his own kiosk.
Yeah, maybe. But now it would be AI-based technology of, personal recommendation of newspaper. let's say future vision of kiosk.
Well, give it another 3 years, and I'll have him on the podcast, and he can tell me about his dreams for global domination of the AI kiosk space.
Might be the case.
Amazing. Well, Agata, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
You've been a great guest.
This was a great time, and thank you for having me again.
Such a good episode today with Agata. I loved how she chooses what she gets hands-on involved in. We'll see you next Wednesday for another Founder episode, or Monday for the Peer Effect Postbag with Freddie. As ever, if any questions, just email us at hello@peer-effect.com or reach out on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and happy scaling.